Greetings. Today we are going to learn to play with the pawns. Whites always start the game. And by the way, one fun way to determine which player is white, you take two pawns, one white, one black. Or you could take even one, just the white one. And then you shuffle it between your hands and you give the choice to the other player. If the other player discovers the pawn, he is whites. If he doesn't discover it, he is the black one. Okay. So at the beginning, you have two choices. Pawns always play straight, and your choice is to either have it move only one square forward, or at the beginning you can just jump 2 squares. You can do this 2-square jump only when your pawn is not touched yet, when it is on the initial line. And the blacks can do the same. They can jump. Any pawn at the beginning of the game, you may jump. However, suppose you already jumped. Next time, if you're playing with the same pawn, you can only move 1 square forward. Okay? Always just 1 square forward after the initial jump. So why do a lot of players prefer jumping? The game is about controlling the middle part initially and then intimidating the other player. So if I move only 1 square further, I don't have much control over the middle area. If I jump 2 squares, as the other player is not there, I have some extra control. And pawns, actually, this is the funny thing about the pawns. They eat diagonally. So you should visualize a straight line. This is how they go forward. And you should visualize letter V on top of the straight line. They eat the letter V. For instance, if my pawn is here, they don't do anything to each other. They just blocked their pathways, so neither can move. But they cannot destroy each other. However, if I have this one here, this white pawn can take it like this. This will mean that the other player has an advantage over me because he took 1 pawn and I took nothing from him. And either ways, if I have this other pawn here, the player may choose to take either this one or this other one, drawing letter V. Okay. Fun way to remember this is to remember about the roots of chess. So it comes from the military. The game came from India through Persia or modern day Iran. And imagine a soldier, a medieval soldier who has this shield in front of him, right? So his one, that was loud. His one arm is defending himself. So the front area is blocked by that huge shield, right? So with his other arm, he can just attack sideways, yeah? Or he could hold the shield this way and then attack the other side, okay, towards the other side. So this sideways movement, if you want to remember that, you could visualize and think of, those medieval soldiers with their huge shields, okay? So basically that's it. And one interesting thing about pawns is when they reach the end of the field, suppose this pawn comes here, the pawn can become a queen. So this is a very interesting metamorphosis, a very interesting transformation. And in many languages, these pawns are visualized or called male soldiers. In my native language, in Armenian, we call them zinvor, which means a soldier. And we always, there is patriarchy. So you always imagine a male soldier. And it's interesting to note some sort of transsexuality in the game if you come from a culture where a pawn is a male figure, right? So yes, black pawns, when they reach the end of their field and occupy any line, like from the first, any square from the first line, again, the black pawn becomes a queen. Especially if you have lost your queen during the game, she will resurrect. So this is another interesting aspect of the game. You are able to sort of resurrect your deceased players. You can resurrect a rook or anything. Your pawn, although the pawn is very basic, but it has this interesting power of transformation. And historically, it would take place. You know, sometimes people in courts would start at a very low rank as ordinary soldiers or wives, and they could go up to come to the point of becoming a modern day prime minister or vizier in some cultures, or queens, or even rulers. Although in the game of chess, kings are irreplaceable. You cannot eat the other player's king, and when your pawn reaches the end of the field, you cannot get or turn your pawn into a king. Any other figure will go up except the king. So that's also very interesting. Now, when I teach my students, and when the person is a total beginner, from this point on, we would simply play only with pawns so that the learner would get more comfortable. Often people do this step, so either in front of the king or in front of the queen, they choose to jump for two squares, their pawns. Suppose we do the classical move. And when this is done, the other player often copies or chooses to create some counter measures against the step. So you can choose to either react as a black player or do your own thing. Yeah, you could have this one here, although much later we will learn that sometimes there are some steps that are not very advisable, especially if you play with a more experienced player. But okay, this is the most classical thing that a lot of people do. Okay, then let's say the other player does this, and see, now if I do this, this pawn will take my pawn and I will lose a pawn. So that wouldn't be wise. That's why I will not have it done. However, the game of chess is very exciting because you can create traps for other players. Or you can create situations where instead of losing something, you also take away something from the other player. So I'll have this one pawn here, and then the other player might have this one here. And now, when I have this here, this white pawn can take my pawn, and I can take his pawn with this other pawn of mine. Again, V shape. Okay, so wherever your pawn is, even from the beginning, it can take any figure except the king. So suppose this pawn is here. My other pawn, this one, the V shape, okay, hop, I take it with this one. So this is what we would do during the first game, like play around with the pawns until we are out of pawns, or until the other player feels very comfortable. See here, why people do not choose to make only one move? Because your pawns already control these lines. The white pawns control all this line. The black ones control this one. Whenever, like I have it here, this or this pawn, they can take it like this, drawing V shapes. So that's why it makes more sense to jump, because when you jump with this pawn, you control those two areas. So this would be a bad move for me, because hop, I would lose my pawn. And this would be a bad move for me, because hop, I would lose it. So this pawn here already has the advantage of controlling two extra squares with merely its presence, okay? This V shape, okay? 1, 2. So this is why it makes sense to jump at the beginning of the game. Another little thing, often people choose to control the edges, like only moving the pawn for one step, like this, like this, like this, like this. And we will later learn why it is done. But as of now, as we're discussing only the pawns, this is enough. Yeah, it's enough for you to know that this is how the game is played. And this is what you need to aim at. Yeah, control over the middle, control over these edges. And as they draw V shapes, every pawn is stronger when they build these diagonal lines or little mountain shapes like this, a little zigzaggy or mountainy shape. This means every other pawn defends the other pawn that stands diagonally to it through that V shape, and I have this one here. So this pawn defends those two. If I take this pawn, my other pawn would be taken either by this one or by this other one, another V shape, right? That's it. I teach several subjects, and check out the first video on chess for intelligence, because I speak of the figures, their values, their position. Feel free to reach out to me. I am located in Van Nuys area in North Hollywood, but I also teach online. So private tutoring lessons or group lessons, if you're interested in either, just reach out to me. Subscribe to the channel, because I'm going to continue this series and we are going to learn to play chess slowly together, okay? So subscribe, like the videos, give me a little something like a comment, like, oh, this was interesting, thank you so much, or I wanted to learn to play chess for a long time, or I know how to play a little bit, but I'd love to go further. So comments are useful and helpful to my channel, and also through commenting you're helping people like yourself, because the video becomes a little bit more visible and more people will be able to discover it and benefit from it. That's it for today. Thank you. High five to y'all, and see you next time.